start by welcoming you to NewFinance. Pretty straightforward agenda tonight. Our first speaker is Zain from AlphaHat.
Thanks, Eddie. AlphaHat is the fastest way to analyze investment-related data. And my background, I have been in the investment management industry for the past 6 years in various quantitative positions. And most of that has been spent working closely with portfolio managers, helping them understand their risk-return trade-offs. One of the things I found was that it was an incredibly repetitive and frustrating process to have to deal with a whole slew of different data. So how do you overcome that? How do you make it so that portfolio managers can get to the answers they want quickly? When an investment manager has an idea or a hypothesis, what do they have to do to test it or to dig into it? They first have to grab the data from somewhere. Typically, it's going to be a tool like Bloomberg, Capital IQ, FactSet. Then they're going to have to create some sort of data infrastructure around it if it's a particularly complicated query. And then they're going to do statistical analysis on it. So if you want to run a regression, you're going to have to pull that data into R or MATLAB. If you're doing something more simple, like pivot tables, you'll pull it into Excel and do it that way. What you get out of this is some kind of visualization. So you have that result there. And then at the very end, the investment manager or the analyst who's working on this is going to want to communicate that with their colleagues. So what do? You put a title on your chart, and you make that title descriptive so that your end user knows what you're talking about. What did you do? What universe of securities did you use? What particular data concepts you have? What time range you're talking about? And then finally, you summarize that. What are you seeing in this particular chart? And then you then send that out to your colleagues or to your boss or your clients. So an example of the kind of work that goes into doing quantitative analysis is up here. So on the left, we have one page of a 40-plus page manual of how to get Bloomberg data into R. On the right, we have a relatively simple Python program to analyze a very straightforward ETF strategy. And investment managers don't have the time or inclination to spend doing this, to spend reading manuals. So typically what they're going to do is they're going to have the analyst on their desk or a quant do this kind of work. And what you find is that this work is time-consuming, it's frustrating, and it's error-prone. So what do we want to do? We want to get rid of all of this blue stuff in the middle. So you start with an idea, a hypothesis that you want to test or look into. And you still need the visualization. You still need the title. You still need the summary. So the central idea here is that if you are able to communicate that chart or that visualization to your end users in an unambiguous form, if a human can understand that, then a computer should be able to as well. So what we're suggesting is put the title up front. From your idea, just type the title of the investment-related chart you want to see, and it'll get generated automatically. And that is AlphaHat. So as you type, the terms start to get recognized. There's a drop-down. You select the particular term you're interested in, and then you get a result. It has the title of the chart, the axes are properly labeled, data source clearly identified, and all that computation was done for you in the background. You don't have to pull anything from Bloomberg or do any manipulation in R. And then finally, you summarize it. In one version of this product, it'll be free, and you'll be able to share those summaries on Twitter, on StockTwits, on social media. Potentially in the paid version, these are summaries that you would then send to your colleagues, to your boss, to your investors, clients. So right now we are in alpha stage, so we've been doing prototyping. And if you'll notice, so at the very top, this is a tag-based input. It's something new that we're trying. Because what we started with was unstructured free text entry. And what happens when you do that? So if you look at something like Siri, where you can literally say anything, what is going to happen the vast majority of the time, if you're going to do anything complicated, you're not really going to get the results that you want. And this is an experience that I'm sure a lot of people here have had. You don't like pull out your phone and start asking Siri about stocks because it doesn't really know what you're talking about. And so you see that about half of iPhone users don't end up using Siri on any kind of regular basis. And the major reasons for this are sort of errors and poor answers. So once you have a negative experience or a failed query, you typically will stop using it. And so that's something that we found when we were doing our alpha testing. So if you have a completely unstructured entry, once people encounter no result, they'll sort of bounce and they won't come back. So doing this, helping the user along is a key component to what we're doing. Another thing we found is that consumption of the content was much more important than the creation of the content. So if you're creating a product where the central UI is a search box, you would think that, oh, this should act more like Google, that the first place you arrive at is the search box, and that people will start searching from there. What we ended up finding out is that people are much more interested in looking at what other people are querying. So, when you do a Google search, I don't really care what the results of that particular query were for you, but when you're searching for investment-related data, and especially if I know who you are, I really care about what other users are finding and what kind of results they're getting. So in the next version of our product, seeing what other users have found is going to be central to that. So in some sense, it's more like Wikipedia than it is like Google, where you'll potentially have a core group of dedicated users who are generating the content. Even though the content is very easy to generate, there's going to be a core group of users who are inclined to generate that content, who know what they're talking about. And then there'll be a larger user base that will be consuming that content. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about some paradigm shifts that are going on. So in the past, if you wanted to learn about something, what did you have to do? Underlying data sources were stored in print media. If you wanted to search those data sources, you had to go to some place like a library. And if you wanted to get a quick synthesis of that data, you would go to some place like Britannica, which had paid editors who would then go do that work for you. Now, what does that look like now? Right now, we're looking at digital data. If you want to search for something, you go to Google. And if you want to get a quick synthesis, you go to Wikipedia. Something slightly similar is going on in finance if you're an investor. So the previous regime was that you had paid and very expensive data feeds. Your search layer was Bloomberg, and that synthesis layer was performed by quants or research analysts at banks and things like that. So what we envision is that we are moving to a world of freer data. So we see that, for example, stock quotes are available on the NASDAQ website freely. You get price, volume, short interest data. Whenever companies file with the SEC since 2009, they're required to file in an XML or a computer-readable format. And you see all sorts of government data available for free. And so there are startups like Quandl and a number of others that are pulling all these different data sources, these free data sources, and exposing APIs into that. So it makes data that much more accessible. And so Quandl or startups like it or a startup like it will potentially be that search layer in the future. And so we are building on top of Quandl, although it doesn't necessarily have to be Quandl. We're agnostic as to where it comes from. And so where we fit into this, we believe, is we will serve that new synthesis layer in the new paradigm, where we will be doing a lot of the work that quants were doing. And that I don't mean to displace quants, and I don't believe quants will be displaced. I just believe that quants will go higher up the value chain. So right now, a lot of the work that quants end up doing is a lot of infrastructure maintenance, coding that really doesn't have anything to do with the core of what they're trying to get at. So, in the future, quants will spend more time thinking about ideas, about methodologies, about what particular concepts they want to use, what they want to do in their regressions, and less time sort of actually doing the nitty-gritty coding, maintaining of their security master, linking data sources, and everything else. So that, in a nutshell, is AlphaHat.
Excellent. Okay, let's take some questions for Zain.
So my name is Ahmad. I build mobile systems for bulge bracket investment banks in the US and Europe. Trade capture, fixed income, derivatives. Very interesting idea. Who's your target audience? Who's the ideal user of this?
So eventually, it will be professional investment managers. But to start off with, this is going to be a relatively open platform. So it's going to be free, and it'll be targeted towards more retail type investors.
Right. So buy side, not sell side,
No, this is definitely a buy side product.
What about some areas where data might not be publicly available, like dark pools?
Yeah, so that's at some point we will have a paid. We will necessarily need to have a paid product because not all data is going to be freely available.
I'm sorry, but it's a very interesting idea. What about, can you tell us about the technology stack, about specifically from the front end all the way to the back end, what kind of AI system, whatever you feel comfortable disclosing?
So front end I'm building in Angular. The back end I'm writing in Go.
Okay. And the AI?
So there is a machine learning component to this, but that actually is not central. So what I did is I looked at a lot of the analysis that I've done in the past, a lot of the quantitative analysis, and sort of filtered out. There are maybe 11 or 12 core functions that you really need to be able to run, but you have to run them in a generalized manner and take the input and sort of infer how those parameters are going to fit in. Also, you have to impute, when people type in a search query, they're going to leave out a lot of stuff. So we have to infer good defaults for a lot of those. And so really that's where the core value add starts.
So have you ever thought about equity analysis? Let's say we're comparing IBM versus index or versus sector or versus market. Can that be done freestyle, free text? So Apple versus sector, Apple versus NASDAQ, Apple versus...
Yeah, that actually is something you could do. You could do
cool.
Apple and then, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. A very nice idea.
Zain, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Very interesting, I think.